very last CFAC meeting we have until our voters in February 2023 have for consideration a bond package. And we're going to share a little bit more about that package. Our board of directors has had the opportunity to take final action a couple weeks ago. And so tonight you're going to hear a little bit of an update about the financing and cost and package and what ideas and topics are resonating in our local community. So with us tonight, in just a moment, I'll turn it over to Trevor Carlson with Piper Sandler. He was last with our committee in August 2021, so well over a year ago. And there's a lot of change in the finance and bond market, a lot of change with price escalation, our assessed value change, and he's going to walk us through a very high level overview of what those changes look like and what that bond would cost our local taxpayers. And he'll kind of paint a picture of what's happening in the future for our district as well. And then we'll hear from our architect team, which will do a high level summary about what package was approved by the board of directors, what would be included, what would be optional, so they'll hit a high-level overview with some opportunity, of course, to get your feedback, because every step along the way, your feedback drives our board of directors thinking and visioning about next steps and where we go from here. So this will be, again, our last CFAC meeting that we'll have before the bond, but we'll have two wonderful opportunities where all of our patrons will be invited. We'll have an opportunity right here at Morning Primary for what we'll call a town hall event, where our families, our students can come, get engaged, learn more about what's happening, share some food and celebration, and help to give us some feedback from their point of view. And that'll be a combination for elementary, high school, because our high school is also included in this bond package. And then we'll have another repeat in February at Ptarmigan Ridge, where we'll kind of repeat that process and ask for some focused feedback related to that school site. So there will be more opportunities for public engagement before those ballots are due, and we see what happens on February 14th. Welcome to Morning Primary, built in 1968 when this facility was opened. It was built for 290 students. As it sits today, we're hovering at about 540 students in this elementary school, so we're about 87% over the permanent capacity that it was designed for, and we have more students coming along the way. And so part of our solutioning here is just to help get that information out with what our current capacity and condition is and are, and help to make sure that we're telling our story, doing a good job. And so thank you for taking time away from your families and your loved ones to be here. Just help to hear our context and story, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Trevor Carlson with Piper Sandler, who's going a cappella, I believe. Let's see how it goes.
I'll try. Can you all hear me? Yes? If you can't, I'll use the microphone. I prefer not to, but I can if I have to. Thank you for having me, Ed, and the team. This is a presentation that we shared with the school board a few weeks ago. Same exact presentation. Just want to help you all get your mind around some of the details around the financing for the bond, and really be here as a resource and to answer any questions that you may have. If you have questions later on, feel free to filter those through the superintendent. Happy to have conversations with folks on a one-on-one basis if needed. So with that, my name is Trevor Carlson. I work for a firm called Piper Sandler. We serve as the district's bond underwriter. Ultimately, what does that mean? Once the voters approve a bond issue, we work as your broker to broker the transaction. Think of that as very similar to a mortgage broker, if you will. We find buyers for the bonds, lock in financing costs. The dollars are placed into the capital projects fund. So the construction team, not the financing team, the construction team, along with the school board and staff, can go forth and build what the voters approved. So with that, I'll try and be brief with my comments, but again, want to be here for a resource. The first couple slides help us try to think about different ways to communicate with the voters. Some messaging that works well, some messaging that might not be something that you lead off with during your conversations with your neighbors and potential voters. The first slide here and the second slide are outputs from our biennial voter election survey research. We do this every other year. This is from 2019. Let's put on our time capsule hats. 2 years after this was in the midst of COVID, I didn't think it would probably be the most beneficial to have the largest asterisk on the world attached to the data saying, strange results due to COVID. So this information is from 2019. This information and these types of messaging topics haven't changed for many, many years. So that led me to put a pause on putting this information together. We'll revisit it this summer. The question is, would you favor a bond measure if you knew the funds would be used for X, Y, and Z? CTE has ranked very, very high for many, many, many years. And why I bring this up, and specifically with the school board and the staff within the last couple of months, is having folks start to think about the key messages that will resonate for your voters based upon what the school board approved and ultimately was turned into the auditor's office to be on the ballot in February. Safety and security resonates very, very well. The tax rate for homeowners will not decrease if the bond is approved. That's usually very, very difficult, but what we've taken away from that is to try and maintain tax stability. And that's really the crux of what the model towards the end of the presentation shows. That's why I wanted to hand out some hard copies, because it's hard to see actually in hard copy on paper and on the screen. There are a lot of details, and we'll talk about some of those assumptions that go into that bond plan. So just kind of the list is in front of you. I don't need to read it to you. You have it up on the screen. There's some hard copies floating around. If folks want electronic copies, again, shoot me an email. Happy to send a version your way. The second page shows less effective messaging. Not to say that this doesn't work in every community. Again, these are statewide voter survey results. These are not for Oregon School District. But athletics for years and years has not resonated well. So it's something that, depending on the audience, depending on who you're speaking to, depending on the scope of work that the school board looks to achieve, right, can be prioritized at different levels. But just so you can see some things that don't resonate as well over time. And why we stopped at kind of that 60% level, because the voted bond needs 60% yes vote to pass. You need a super majority. The pollsters like to see about a 10 basis point buffer. So if you poll at messaging at a 70% level, that gives plenty of cushion for that to resonate well and hopefully achieve a 60% yes vote. Okay? Please stop me if you have questions. Key problems or key education problems, thinking about education in general. What are the biggest problems facing schools in Washington State today? Lack of funding, overcrowding. That's something that Ed just brought up as far as what the school was designed for and how many kiddos are here now. Seems to be a key messaging topic that you might want to lean into as you move through the next couple of months. And then some of the other things, again, don't need to read all of those to you, but more job training classes doesn't resonate. It's at 2%, but again, remember what the CTE resonated very, very high on the earlier slide about what folks would like to use the bond proceeds for. What is your main source of information? And this is going to be key for the Citizens Committee that is going to run the campaign and be the marketing arm. So the school district can provide factual information only. The marketing of the bond needs to be done by the community. These are a couple of important data points for the Citizens Committee to lean into as they move through time. So what is your main source of information about your local school district? Newspaper, school employees, neighbor citizens, internet. It's kind of interesting, social media is pretty far down on the list. We think that campaigns are run by Facebook. Maybe not so much. It's an important piece, and I think the multi-pronged approach is really the key to driving a successful yes vote. Okay, so this is where folks receive their information. You can see that newspapers have declined dramatically over the recent past. In 2007, that number was 40%. We know this, but to actually see the numbers and really kind of synthesize that, it's pretty amazing. I put an O or an SD beside these different line items to give you a sense of how much quote-unquote control that the school district and the committee has in the messaging. You can argue whether they can control school employees and the messaging surrounding that, but word of mouth and the amount of really control that the school district has in that messaging is key. And word of mouth is the most powerful communication source. Okay, so when you're out there talking to your neighbors and friends about this, it's really, really impactful and important. So this is where folks receive their information. Where would they like to receive their information? A printed newsletter. You know, let's break out the envelopes and the stamps. That hard copy is really, really important. Social media jumped up a little bit higher. Remember on the previous slide is where do they receive, where would they prefer to receive? Again, that multi-pronged approach is going to be key in disseminating the information to the citizens. Email from the school district, newspaper, websites, a lot of district tools here at your disposal. Kind of breaking those into different groups, again, is important for that multi-pronged approach to tailor and to grab the attention of all the different constituents. Okay, so we've tried to break out printed newsletter, 55 and plus, 55 age and above, rural areas, small school districts. Guess what? Parents really love the emails. They're going to receive a vast amount of data about your school district from email communications. Okay? Social media, a little bit younger. Right? We know this, but hopefully seeing it drives a spark and gets the juices flowing because the rubber meets the road between now and the middle of February. A lot of work needs to be done. Ballots will be mailed right around January 27th. You got lucky this year, it's on Valentine's Day. Fill out your ballots early, get them in the mailbox, get them in the mail drop. Certified around February 24th. So if you're on pins and needles and it's a nail biter, it's a close one, you've got to wait for some recounts to happen to achieve that final result. For your reference, the voting history for your school district. Operating levy is on top. Right? Enrichment is another term that is utilized in that levy. 4-year levy was approved in February 22 at 54, almost 55%. Capital projects levy, it's been a little while since those were on the books, but the voter information is there at the bottom. And on page 9, bond election results for your school district. Passage in February of 06 at 62%. A couple tries in 2017 that were unsuccessful. Tax rates. Tax rates are the way that we will communicate the cost of the financing of the approved bond to homeowners. Everyone has a different value for their assessed value, right, for their property. We take all of the debt, the principal and interest, divide it into the total assessed value, so within the district's boundaries. We add up all of the real and personal property, to come up with a tax rate. That millage rate, or dollars per thousand, is then a common number that we can utilize. If I have a piece of property that's worth 100,000 and someone has a piece of property worth $1 million, divide by 1,000 times that tax rate equals the tax bill, right? Since we all have different slices of the pie, it's difficult to describe the actual cost without having a common number. Okay, so that tax rate will be multiplied by your assessed value to then create a tax bill, or a portion of your tax bill that will be utilized to pay off the principal and interest on the bonds. Historically, and I'll show you a graphical representation too towards the end, right? These numbers have been in the high 5s, 6, 7, 8, dropping down fairly dramatically. Really the big driver there is the growth of the assessed value. And I'll show you historically what that assessed value has done and our projection for 2023. That tax bill has grown a lot. And it's a combination of new construction and then the reassessment of existing properties, right? As the housing market has reached all-time highs, that's a big factor. But that's driven down that total assessed value to $1.95 between bond, existing bond, and the operating levy. Okay. This was a little hard to see up on the screen, but just from a reference perspective, between all of the school districts in King and Pierce County, I've ranked from highest to lowest total tax rate. Bethel is at 522, and you're at $1.95 today. These are based on 2022 actuals. Looking at a similar graphic, utilizing assessed value, similar assessed value, districts that have a similar assessed value in the kind of $2.5 to $3 billion range across the state. Again, ranked from highest to lowest. There you are at $1.95. Pullman at $4.86. Just to give you a sense of where you are in relation to other school districts in your area and across the state. Quite a crowd tonight. It's just dark and gloomy outside. We need some coffee for these folks or something. Debt capacity. In the Constitution, it says that school districts can borrow up to 5% of their assessed value. So in this box, I've done some math. Based upon the preliminary 2023 assessed value, about $3.3 billion times 5%, subtract out any debt that's on the books, equals $158 million. Okay, so we always need to have our eye on that to make sure what the school district is asking for from the voters is achievable and within the boundaries of statutory capacity. I've talked about this just a little bit, but just for a review, voter-approved debt creates a new revenue stream. Repaid with property taxes. You need 60% yes vote, 40% validation. So 40% of the folks that came out at the last general election need to vote. So you have to have a critical mass. You can't have 3 people come out and vote yes and have it pass. If all 3 voted yes, it would be 100% passage rate, but you would fail on the validation. Ultimately, in that made-up scenario, very simplified, the bond would fail. Validation has not been a problem. I don't anticipate it being a problem. Mail-in voting has allowed folks the ease of sitting at their kitchen counter and filling in the bubble. It's pretty easy to do, so we see turnout in sufficient numbers that validation has not been problematic. Questions? I'm gonna pause. None. One's brave enough to ask their question.
Something overall that you're limited to for all GO bonds.
And non-voted, yes, voted and non-voted. You can borrow without the vote of the people. That's a 3/8% maximum. Think of that as a personal loan. That would be backed by the general fund, full faith and credit of the district. Yeah, so that's, the 5% is total.
Total, all bonds prior.
Yes,
Okay.
great question. We talked about assessed value. You've got a couple graphics here. One, this bar graph, and then on the next page, the raw data will be broken out so you can see the percentage changes by year and the amount of new construction that's been added to the tax rolls. So, again, put on our time capsule hat. What happened in the early 2000s? We had a real estate run-up, right? We had a crash, things went down. Now we're at all-time highs. You know, almost a parabolic curve here. You've had a lot of growth in assessed value. That preliminary 2023 number, 3.3 billion. I like to look at compound annual growth rate, especially over a long period of time, to give us some sense of what does that growth look like, and is it feasible to have the assumptions that we've placed in the model going forward, are they based in some sort of reality? So on average, over 20 years, 8.2%, right? On average, 8.2%. Year one, 8.2%. The next year, boom, 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 20 times, get you to 3.3 billion. Pretty significant. The raw data, you've seen massive growth here, 19, 20, 21, 22. The last couple of years, basically right on the nose at 25% year-over-year growth, hence that hockey stick curve on the previous page. New construction, estimating about $200 million worth of new construction hitting the tax rolls for the assessed value in 2023. Fairly sizable compared to some of those years. I mean, even look back in right before the Great Recession, 70, 80, big dollars. Really broadening out the tax base. As that tax base grows broader based on new construction, it kind of peanut butters the burden of the levies across a bigger pie. This was really hard to see, but I want to show you for transparency's sake, all the details. These are preliminary assumptions. I guarantee you I will be wrong. We are estimating assessed value growth. We're estimating interest rates. We're estimating the size of the bond sales and the timing. A lot of that will be defined when the pencils are very, very sharp and construction cash flows are drawn up, and we'll tailor this financing program to meet your specific needs for the school district. But from a general perspective, this is pretty close, usually kind of how it plays out. Okay? The top portion looks at our assumptions. We've got a strong credit rating. The state allows you to borrow their credit rating. Think of that as a cosigner, if you will. So you're able to utilize the AAA rating that the state of Washington has. They're backing your bonds also, along with the full faith and credit of the school district and the unlimited property tax power that the voters will give you to tax them regardless of rate or amount, sufficient dollars to pay principal and interest. Strong credit pledges, that drives your interest cost down significantly. Assessed value growth, we've got some significant growth in the near term as we're anticipating new construction to be continually added to the tax rolls. And again, this is a living, breathing document. Just because you see it up here today doesn't mean this is what it will look like post-bond sale. As soon as we receive actuals, as soon as we receive more finite, better estimates, we tweak it, make it better, year after year, month after month. Right now, we have bond sales in 23, 24, 25, placeholder for a future authorization, and below those color bars, at the bottom of the chart, you kind of see the cascading dollar amounts. Those are our estimates for principal and interest payments for the bond sales. The assessed value on the far left-hand side, and then we do some division on the right-hand side, in the right-hand box, the tan-ish color, to create that tax rate. And based upon where you are today, 38 cents for bonds. In calendar 23, your existing debt goes to 0, the fourth column in from the left. So your bond tax rate will actually go to 0 in calendar 23. If we receive voter approval in 23, we sell bonds in 23 for tax collections in 24 calendar year. And for all the school folks that are in here, principals and others, we're not talking school year. We don't care about August 31st. We care about calendar year with taxes. And we're estimating $2.84. You can see that that column of numbers is consistent. Remember, one of the things that resonates well with voters is consistency in taxes. So we're trying to maintain a relatively stable tax pattern. That's our goal. That's one of our key messaging points. I've hit you with a lot of data here, very small print. I'm trying to hide everything. I'm actually giving you everything. Questions? And if you're like me, you wake up in the middle of the night thinking of weird questions, write it down, send it to the superintendent, we'll circle back with you and answer your questions. Yes?
So how does the rate stay the same, in simple terms, how does the rate stay the same when you pass the 3 bonds? Because that's what I'm seeing, that rate staying the same even though we pass 3, correct?
So one authorization, we will, based on a couple different constraints. Number one, I don't want to sell bonds unless you need money, because once you sell bonds, you start accruing interest. So if I can delay the issuance of debt, that could be a good thing. Delay the start of the clock ticking to pay interest. The IRS has some constraints. These are tax-exempt bonds, so you're playing in 3 different spheres of influence. State law dictates bond sales. Federal securities law, aka SEC, and federal tax law, IRS. So there's some IRS constraints here also. So with a sizable authorization that you put forward to the electorate, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to sell all the bonds at once, based upon some different factors. So my best guess here is, based upon what I've seen over 20 years of selling bonds for school districts, is that we'll phase these in over time. I've chosen relatively equal dollar amounts for those first 3 sales under the blue row bar. As construction cash flow becomes, again, sharpen the pencils, more finite, we'll adjust those sale amounts, and possibly the dates. So again, I'm wrong, but it's a really, really good guesstimate.
Well,
that-
it's two authorizations on here, right?
Yes, yes, the kind of orangish, whatever color that is a placeholder. We are planning for the future. And what I'm doing is I'm structuring the 2023 bond authorization to accommodate future growth without incremental increases to the tax rate. So let's say all the assumptions work out to be true. I can't remember what the date is. Can I look at your piece of paper? What's that first date there? I guess that's even small. The authorization in the future, what date is that?
2027.
Thank you. The messaging, again, in this made-up world where all my assumptions are correct, in 2027, the messaging would be for no increase in tax rate, we could layer this next authorization on, rock and roll and go forward. So, but no matter what, we're building capacity for that. That's part of today's plan.
We'll look at enrollment projections here in a minute when Matt shares, but if the developers grow at the rate they've told us, and if we receive an approximate same number of kids per single-family house as we have in the past, we would anticipate and ask of the voters around that 2027 timeframe. Obviously, if this first is approved, we'll continue to monitor what's happening with growth. There could be a slowdown, or there could not. We don't know. We could get more students or fewer than we expect. But that's about the time frame that if all those assumptions hold true, we would probably need to go out for a vote, because the overcapacity that we have in 3 of our 4 schools today will be back into that scenario. Our anticipated numbers around 2030, 2031 will grow to about 5,000 students. Currently we have 2,700. So we'll need somewhere to put them down the road if they come at the rate we think so.
Yeah, great questions. Thank you. And I really give props to the school board and staff for having that forward thinking and building in capacity for the unknown and the potential for growth. If it doesn't come to fruition, it doesn't, but there's a placeholder there that we can utilize to our benefit when we're structuring the next authorization. Graphically, tax rates, existing debt, up to that $4-ish level, trailed off dramatically as assessed value grew over the last decade. You can see that drop to 0 in 2023 when the debt's paid off, and then our goal of layering on this authorization, a potential authorization number 2, to create a level pattern.
I feel like you should get a certificate for Finance 101, Bond 101 with Trevor or something. What do we have?
I should bring certificates.
We should have certificates.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Trevor. So you heard some of the look-fors, and this man is all over the state. In fact, he's regional beyond the state. They do a lot of work to figure out what talking points resonate with our local communities about where would we find support, what would we not find support for. And I hope you listen to some of those look-fors for what's coming up next, because when we think about overcrowding, we think about safety, security, social, emotional health, the kind of learning spaces that invite openness and collaboration. We have a lot of those answers. We've been at this for 1.5 years. And so this final package, Matt Rumbaugh, Brian Love, the architect team from NAC will help to just invite us into a conversation about what would we see, what would we get, how would we address some of these questions that we've been wrestling with this bond package. And we hope that that can equip you with some solid information that you can take from here and begin to share in our local community with our key stakeholders. We'll have to get that word of mouth out so people know what problems are we trying to solve and how will this set us up for now. And keep in mind, this bond is addressing what happens here today and our current constraint. This bond isn't meant to address what's happening down the road. So this school, we mentioned 87% over capacity. Ptarmigan Ridge, the high school, both about 44, 45%. And you think about career technical education, we know about 60% of our graduates will live and work in a 15, 20-mile radius from right here at Orion High School where they're going to graduate. So they're competing for jobs locally. But if you think about our learning space, we have the same number of lab space and career tech ed space, lab space, as we did in 1986 when we were a high school of 250 students. And right now today, 2022, we'll have 2023 graduates this year. We have just shy of 900 students. And that school that has just shy of 900 in a couple of years will have 1,100. It'll grow by 18 to 20%. So as we think about how do we equip today's students with learning spaces that will provide for their needs, that's what this bond is about. And our architect team is going to tell us more about what would we see if this were to be approved.
Freestyle? Can I try the freestyle? You can try the freestyle. Think I'm enough of a loud mouth to make it work. So, I'm Matt, and I've met some of you before. Glad to have a chance to meet some new folks. We're going to step back in time just a little bit, and we're going to just kind of quickly recap what this group has done over the last year and a half. So we started out with facility inventory, addressing, understanding our capacity and needs analysis, and then also doing an exploration of potential long-range options for the school district. And that's kind of what Trevor referred to a minute ago, thinking about future bond measures, because the needs at the school district, we're going to take care of the most pressing ones now, and we know in a number of years there's going to be more to take care of. We continued on in the winter and spring of 2022. We purchased the property next door. I think most of you are probably familiar with that. The first thing that's going to be used for is going to be the new elementary school. So hopefully before long, we will be meeting just down the block there at the brand new elementary school. We've had additional discussions here with school, with the various schools, as well as with the board of directors. And then we started some project design and analysis. And then summer and fall, we've been working really quite a bit on cost estimating, because we needed to provide some detailed information for the board to make a final decision on the bond measure. So we're here. So with that, I wanted to just quickly recap. So some of the things that Ed just shared with you about here are intended to be conveyed by this chart. The black line here represents the current capacity you have in your existing buildings, which is approximately 2,100 students or so you can fit. You already, right now in 2022, as Ed said, you have more students than that. That's why you have a bunch of portable classrooms, right? And so as we continue on, that need continues to increase. So that's part of the reason why the group has been looking at a long-range plan to address the various needs. Growth is one of those reasons. But it's not just future growth, it's growth that has already happened over the last couple of decades. So we want to take care of what's happened over the last couple of decades and look ahead to taking care of what's happening in the future. I won't repeat all these. I think we highlighted a few minutes ago some of the key deficiencies that were identified by the group here at Orion Primary. We can make a lot longer list. I think Christy over here could come up with a much longer list than that, but we have some key needs that need to be addressed here. At the high school, we talked about the CTE being a really big need. That those CTE spaces are from '86, and things are a little different now, and so we want to be able to provide our students with some updated facilities to do that. And then at PTR was not built with the gymnasium, so one of the key deficiencies there is a gymnasium in addition to additional classroom spaces. And the middle school, that's something for a future bond. So that's part of that future planning, is making sure that we're thinking about all of the needs within the district and planning for those. Again, just some of those same numbers we were talking about before, about the growth that has already happened. This is current statistics about the 3 schools we're going to be addressing in this fall. And again, some of the things we're really trying to do, these things are priorities that came from those initial discussions as part of the CFAC group, and as well as other discussions as we met with folks at the various schools and talked with the board of directors
really wanting to make sure that we're providing that high quality environment for all of our students. And we're making enhancements where we know we have deficiencies. And that's both on the CTE and STEM, new science labs, et cetera, for the high school, as well as we have the ability with new elementary school, the gym at PTR, with work at the high school, to be able to really enhance the both during school PE opportunities as well as the after school athletic and community opportunities at the high school. And we also need to make sure that we know that our wrestlers are in a building that really needs to be replaced, and so we're able to take care of that really pressing need at the high school. So, for the first phase of the bond, I'm hoping most of you have had a chance to see some of this before. If not, the new elementary school, high school edition, and a PTR edition, and then the replacement of the turf and track at the high school are our 4 major projects that we're planning for bond number 1. You can see as part of that long-range planning, we have future needs, and so we have kind of identified right now what we currently think are going to be the most pressing needs for bond number 2 and bond number 3. As we get closer, of course, that plan will be reevaluated to make sure that those are still the right and most pressing needs. One of the things I want to highlight here is that the proposed bond is $150 million. If you remember Trevor, he said 158 is the maximum debt the district can have, so we're well within that. So that's one thumbs up. We did our math right on that front. Secondly, it takes a little while to get something built. Any of you who have done a renovation or addition at your house knows it takes a while. Sometimes way too long. So once we pass a bond, we'll be moving right ahead into design work on all the projects and moving forward with construction as quickly as possible. What you can see is that PTR, we think we're going to be able to get open by September of 2025. That's our goal, because we think that those additions can be done a little bit quicker than an entire new elementary school, for example, or the additions at the high school where it's a pretty complicated situation there doing the additions compared to PTR. So we'll be looking at having new schools in 2026. So I hope to be able to meet with you at these new schools at that time. If we've highlighted this, I'm going to be brief here because we want to spend a few minutes on getting some feedback and ideas from you. So I think we've highlighted quite a bit about the high school in terms of the what's going to be included. Most of the new construction is going to be over here on the south side of campus, adjacent to the current athletic complex, and that's where we'll be building some of those CTE programs and athletic programs. And let's see, the elementary school is going to be able to have between 600 and 700 students. We're going to be able to take care of all the current educational needs, some of the deficits that we have here, for example, space for specialists. Being able to provide that individual care for every student and having the right kind of spaces, so we'll be able to do that at the new school. Then we're going to have some great opportunities with gymnasium and the turf field there to be able to provide community opportunities at the school. Then at PTR, we have the new addition of classrooms, gymnasium, and an expansion of the kitchen there. So,
Yes, add one thing. Just as a reminder, what happens to this facility, it stays put. This becomes a unified high school campus. This is where the high school students, as we grow past that 1,000 student mark and bigger, this becomes all high school, and so they will take over. And so we'll renovate this facility to the degree necessary to make it suitable for high school. And it'll probably still stay in our books until we complete that phase 2, whenever that happens down the road. Probably 2030-ish, I would guess, if our projections hold true. So this doesn't get torn down right away. It becomes usable high school space to allow them to grow. And if you go back to, yeah, there you are. You can see this is a tight campus already, so we're going to have to do a little bit of Jenga and jigsaw as we work on a multi-phase approach, because kids will always have to be here somewhere. We don't have another campus or facility or 40 acres elsewhere that we can build. Our committee was very adamant they want our high school to stay right here in town on the valley floor. So that is what this plan assumes. So we'll be shuffling and moving around over the multi-phases as the high school ultimately comes together under one roof sometime in the 2030s.
and many of you have seen it. There's a lot happening here with elementary school, district off of high school, all happening all at once. And so that is going to be a great opportunity. We're now just going to have, a high school will have almost all of this, just a portion of this here for the district office. So, and then eventually, long term, even the district office will be relocated. This will just be 100% high school campus, which I think will be fantastic. Okay, so let's go to small group discussions. I think that there's a few tables with just one or two people. Maybe we'll have you combine a little bit and do that here. And we have 3 questions for you. So the first question we wanted to have you chat about a little bit, and I think what we're going to do is we have a pen and some paper at each table. If you could just jot down, have one person at your table jot down a few things for us so we can remember those. We're going to have a brief reporting time afterwards so you can all share a little bit, but we're going to make sure we capture any of your thoughts. So I'll just put this first question up and have you tackle this. So again, if a few of you wouldn't mind combining just so that you can have a conversation.
It's in your language right now. Just assume you have it here. Worst He's combining projected growth with, and he's trying to balance it. He's trying to balance that, increasing the bonds so you stay balanced over time. So you can do this, which makes it work. It's a design. Time it. They're spraying the tax burden. Yeah, never gets straight. An aggressive evaluation.
So, John, how well
But I just not, I don't have to track. I'm just going to like you're talking right, but you're talking yeah. They're all going right. That's what I'm saying. So I think we need to say that's why there are other impacts to that. By the way,
I know you used that for the last 2 years. I think they're the largest. They're the largest. Those are scheduled to visualization of how the big giant and this will be in 4 years. You're going to be a part of the high school. People that actually is it going to be adjacent elementary school? What's in it? Where are they going to project? Where they put those schools? Middle school. Well, where they can well, no, you would have to most likely, we own one. So like out of the high school, theoretically, at the primary, there's 20 portables on this campus that you would share with the next one. Because they're expensive. Basically. Well, you wouldn't have it because when I moved to OPS, when I moved to this building, well, if you didn't pass the bond, you're looking at probably we couldn't even stand our debt ceiling went up to over $1 million, and then the rest of the state it's not
We were at this meeting. We made the point glasses,
Because they'll remember what's wrong.
one problem in the past, our notebooks all still.
Okay, I'm gonna have us move to our next question. We really just want to try to get a pulse on whether we have answered your questions tonight. And if there's additional ones, we want to make sure that even if we can't answer them all tonight, but we want to answer them for the entire community in the future. So if you could spend a couple minutes on that, that would be great. And then we'll move to our last question and wrap up.
I think someone's mobilizing people to try to. We don't have a large it's about 100, but they said 150, somewhere around there. 150 yes. Facts only. We'll say yes or no. Facts will be presented. Oh, yes
One is they'll pay a little bit of taxes, but in the morning, people who come here, we have very
as long as we pay less taxes. Oh, and your tax rate has that means that more people have less value that are $300,000, $400,000 houses or cover the tax. We used to be the highest guys 6 years ago. I think because of we were so when we try to do because now it's height instead of responsibility. I don't think it's I think more than that, if you've been talking residential, but we're in That's what it's literally just because you go up here. It's where it's post got it turn it. We didn't even just there's ballots that sit on the table, just turn it in. I've never been here. I've never been this close. We got a few, so far, John Megan,
It's high school. We still use the campus. Pull the kids out of the section campus, tear it down. Then it was like kids like,
He's an outsider. He's negative. He always listens. He's very local, but he wrote a bill since he worked in all CFACs for science.
That's the only senior year, so
that's still the current reality. They waste this one time years ago that guy shot a car or something, you know. Or the tennis court. So those people don't those are good situations. But it's still
behind that stage in the classroom.
he's made that he's not dumb enough to go, we're doing this. If we can, he's 10 enough to go, there will be AC, and then we can't. We get a desperate situation again. It's intentional that the assholes will be so every time
but like there's another one.
market so it's how long did I think to last time? And I said, yeah, but and what he told me was, you don't understand how much all these we don't just invest investors telling you know they it's not the last number he told me was in our district 500 million. I'm pushing one a day. People come in and do something.
But you don't move in
Oh yeah. I don't know him. I don't know him and his family yet. I don't know him personally. Do you know him? That's what I'm saying. You know the one thing you can even just registered vote. Next year's like a 2-1 ratio, but I don't know how to say that succinctly. Maybe that's the value, right? So you have 2 and 4, but we don't run that. Proportion of your house. There's not a house up there where it's less than 8 This year changed everything. We try to be very it's never changed. It's just been forced. It's always been our history. It's just been a force. Those are really, really old lines. People think we moved or we grabbed those. So that's 7%. We have no control. Zero control. That's not bound by us. The last change was up on some. There's supposed to be a cross base from 512 down to overtime. And so because of this, allocated, this is going to make sense. And this breaks us land. So that we have the stuff in there. But I guess that never came. They came back to the shit and the other one that back. Well, now it's millions of dollars in tax money. My question is something like how was that related? Loves
All right, one last question. At the table I was just at, we are already kind of heading into this a little bit. So I want to talk a little bit about what do you think is going to be important and useful in Chad being able to share this information with others. Go for it.
Arcade business model. That's what it is.
It's a long-term commitment. It seems like it takes forever.
Because you're not going to create development.
I don't know.
And last bit stuff always most of them. So you don't have interest in most of them are developers. All of them and there's people that talk that too. So what it is, we need to find information. Maybe 2 days. So they don't get the information. Let's just do it. It's your route. Yeah. So have sample here. Just look at your bus driver. You'll be able to tell you stuff. So you can get all this information. So when they're out Tim's, actually,
Right, but you know what I mean? I still don't think
this is way easier than the first year you have to build on a hill. When there's 600 homes in total. But the lion's share of voters are still up there. You got to put people down. That's hard for me. Or you guys, convincing you guys to build incentives. You've seen farmers actually you're sick of guys making full practices for me. It's like, those feel hard to me. Well, that voice can support.
I know that district grade school.
That's my own look at it. It's different. It's already bad as it is.
And each one of the sites that we elementary and the high school they right now remain known. Everywhere the plant has a secondary road on the outside that gets stuck. So we have roundabouts behind the schools. So right now, parent dropouts are still not happening. Well, because you guys are using
Thank you all. What I'd like to do is go around and just have at least one person from each table briefly share maybe a couple of nuggets from your conversation. So can I get a table volunteer to be first to just share one or two things with the rest of us? If not, I'm just going to pick on you. So, all right. I'm going to just start here to my left. So.
We weren't listening.
I would like to share one or two nuggets from your conversation today.
Come on,
Okay. Okay, you don't have to do that.
Oh, thanks, Erin. Well, because one of the things we were saying is that, which I think this is a good point, and I'm going to share the Bonnie's thought. She said when we are showing the schools, like the old schools and things, we have to be very careful to not be critical of the schools, because people like Bonnie work very hard to get those schools in place the way they are, and if we're critical about what they look like, we're kind of saying, oh, you didn't do a very good job planning this. So that's one thing we want to be really careful. And also to thank every community member, because we don't have a big tax base here for commercial. So they truly are the people that are paying for our schools. And so we need to let them know how thankful we are that they are funding our schools, because that's where we get our funding, is from the citizens. Newsletter. She said four times a year they would send out a mailer with a newsletter that just kind of showed behind the flames of what's going on at the different schools and things. Because if you don't have a student in school, you don't get the newsletter. So, or if you don't see it.
I don't know if this is in this thing, but that gentleman had a really good way of explaining to us about, because we said not to overpromise, because if you don't reduce. So your explanation as to how you guys have put levels in is to not overpromise, I think is a good thing for people to hear, because that's been a real problem with Oregon, is we've been promised one thing and then it doesn't happen and people don't understand why. So the way you explained it, I thought was really good.
And they don't forget to do that.
Right, so trying to make it clear, like, we've planned for
Yes.
what we need to plan for, we're confident that we can provide and deliver on what we're promising.
And if we don't, here's my name and number.
I have unlisted numbers. That's
Oh,
I can just say that is always a priority with you guys, is to not overpromise and underdeliver. I do it all the time.
okay, can I get another volunteer? All right. Can you use this or not? It's up to you.
I think we'll just piggyback what we had talked about, just list a couple things, feel free to chime in. We talked a lot about getting the word out to not just families, but also communities and community people that live in smaller areas of aspects of the district that we don't reach out to as much. And so whether they have kids, there's two different groups, kids that have, families that have kids at the district and some that don't. And so I think that's an important aspect, is make sure that we're communicating to the families that don't have children. And we're talking about even as basic as putting door flyers on doors that we don't, get the word out to, or aren't part of the email chain. So that would be either the door flyers or that simple postcard of just saying, that there is a bond vote out there. Because some of those neighboring communities, like Sumner and other areas, they might get the ballot and say, well, Orny, that's not what they affiliate themselves with. They're bounded by so many other districts.
Can I piggyback on that? Because this other table was talking about the same thing. Like, just the other day, I realized that this area over here is actually part of Portland School District, and that wasn't clear to me before, so I think trying to make that more clear, like, okay, this is our Oregon School District community.
And maybe it's just one of those little postcard notes that show the map of we are Oregon, if something really basic, that says, please vote. Mostly as not as a detail of what we went through here, but just say that there's a vote in February.
That's interesting, because I talked to an alumni guy today who had no idea about Tahali. He didn't know it was in the Oregon School District, so he was like, I just found that out. He's an alumni, he was born and raised here and graduated from Oregon, right? So it probably is very beneficial to us to show our boundaries and what that looks like.
And even having marker points in that overall boundary map, I've seen the boundary map printed on a couple of informational pieces, but it's really hard to decipher what's Boarding Valley, and then up in this little view part, how close Tahale is, and what parts of Tahale are considered Oregon School District. So kind of maybe marking that in the same way on the other hill up in Sunrise, marking that so people are able to identify something that says, oh my gosh, I do live in Oregon School District. It's not my address, but that's where my kids go.
John, you maybe heard from a couple people, he wonders why we added to Albany. We didn't add it, it's just in woods. It's always been there, so that's not a new boundary or something we recently decided we wanted, or maybe this idea that because sometimes our community, we're the representation of government, so we're a school district, therefore we have say in the highway, or we have say in, those boundaries, or just.
You go down Bridge Street to where the Carbon River is, and there's that one mallard in the middle. I have a picture of a footbridge of children walking across the footbridge from the hill into town to get to school. Like, that's been the district the whole time. It's just you don't think of it because there's not as many people up there until now.
And this gentleman today said, well, then why don't we just dump the Holly? Why can't we? I'm like, well, I can't explain that very well to you, but I don't let there's reasons. Well, why can't we just, redraw the lines? Why can't, well, it's not that easy. You don't just get to redraw lines, right? So maybe educating a little bit in layman's terms of why our district is large. We have a large district, land-wise, but maybe explaining, I don't know how you would do that, because that's a hard one.
To your point, there was a little bit of misinformation going around up until very recently that stated that those boundaries are new or have been new, like in the last 5 years. And that was a complete fallacy. So now that that's been out there to some people trying to backtrack on that and say, no, these have been the district boundaries forever. It's just, they just started taking this wooded area and putting homes in there. And it's just growing down and down and in and in. So,
Which gets out by word of mouth.
Yes.
Right? So we need to be educated so that when people are asking those questions, this is why. And straightening that rumor mill, straightening the rumor mill that, no, that's not the way that, no, right?
That whole hillside, people don't realize that those trees were they're not trees now.
We want to welcome our new neighbors as they build, because they're going to pay $2 to our one before these bonds are done. That's why we don't want to get rid of them. We won't be able to have the nice facilities, replace our facilities from the 80s. We want to welcome them. Oregon is a welcoming community. Also, the more school facilities are our community facilities. The better facilities we have in town, the better we will have. There's nowhere else to rent a space or to do dance classes or cheer or sports, or churches rent out different places too. I mean, the better facilities we have for our schools, the better our community, for our values and our rates of crime and teen pregnancy. Everything is interwoven. So it's not like, no, we just don't want new schools. It's like, oh, you also don't want, you want more crime and you want more children running around like crazy. It goes hand in hand. We have to remind them it's not just a one issue. It encompasses the entire community. I also say that they do
Table over there, wants to share?
Thank you, Ed, for helping us plan for decades instead of just putting out fires year to year to year. I like that there's enough, there's decades enough where my high schooler could come back and kids could be in schools that we're going to be voting on now.
Just so you say that, there were plans in place and then superintendents changed. So also keep that in mind that
So Ed can't.
when I was on board, we did have a 20-year plan. And then superintendent, we had a superintendent change and all of that went sideways. So just remember that too, like there's been plans, lots of plans, and when superintendent changes, it changes your plans.
Are you saying we have to give Ed a 20-year contract?
Locking him in, yes.
That's okay.
I know, I just did the math. That's old.
I was gonna say, be careful.
Yeah. Take it back. Older.
I think one of the big ideas that we talked about in our table was making sure that we have specific material that's relevant for each building and kind of personalizing it a little bit so that every family can see themselves in the benefit of passing and voting yes. So kind of promoting to each graduating class or what would be the equivalent of the graduating class in each building. We were just speaking specifically to, what elementary families might be focused on and how we would speak to our community and, maybe how the middle school might be feeling of this first wave and how they would approach that. And that might be a little tricky at first. And just really taking some time to be conscious about that thinking, and that could make a big difference.
Piggybacking off of everyone's comments, I think that the biggest way to reach out to the community and be effective, truly effective, is really open communication. In telling the facts, telling the dark or truth, the good and the bad, however they may look, and kind of having, when I say everyone, be known about what's happening and why this bond is really truly important for future generations. Because I think that Ed is doing a phenomenal job as a superintendent and trying to make mistakes or whatever, it's great. But I think that the people here, really, all of you here for a reason. You guys, obviously also want to hear what this bond is about, but also want to pass so that the future generations can have a place, a facility, and not be portables, as the past generations have been. Right? So with that being said, I just think that all of us, stepping up and being ambassadors for this bond and letting everybody in the audience and even the surrounding areas know, hey, there's a bond happening. Put your value, do it. And I think we all need to step up and not just kind of rely or point the finger to somebody else. Oh, he's in charge, he's going to figure it out. No, we all are in charge. We all got to figure it out. We all have to step up and let everybody already know. Whether they're in Tahale or wherever, let them know. And that's the biggest thing. Open communication is all I have to say. That's the biggest thing. If you can do that, everything else, the 60%, I feel it'll get far more than 60%. You can get everybody in the audience know about the spot and why it's important for the kids. I'm pretty damn sure it's going to be well over 60%. I'm really confident in that.
Would the school district be opposed to getting the students involved in campaigning on this?
We will be able to share facts. We won't be able to really campaign, but I do anticipate there's a lot of Booster and other organizations that have a vision around how to engage students and families in the messaging and the communication. Part of our town hall is when we come back to the table in January and February, we're going to figure out ways to involve our families and students in capturing additional voice. One of the board of directors' strong values is that transparency and the clear communication, and they'll love to get voice, and so we will have some opportunities to help get our students involved and shape their input in some of these projects as well before it's all said and done, before the ballots are turned in.
Okay, because
I was, my daughter's in Mr. Peterson's American politics class, and I was wondering if maybe we could help or get the students involved in making flyers and telling their stories about, you know, the classes they're going to, how they were crowded, and make it personal, and then
We have leaders in the room from all of our schools, and that's some of been our conversation. They're going to take some of this feedback today back to their respective schools and teams and things. How do we connect with our own school community and get that story out there in a way that aligns to PBC rules? So we can communicate facts, and we want to be transparent and on point. So I do believe there will be additional school-specific. We're allowed one mailer as a system. We won't be able to synthesize all of this, but what our job is to take your feedback and capture what's most important, what's most salient, and turn that into the mailer that will hit to all of our taxpayers, our voters, and the board has been very clear in that. We want to make sure this message goes to everybody, every household, so everybody will get something. This feedback will shape what that something is, but we know there's more stories to tell beyond that. So videos, print, stories, text, there'll be a lot more on our website or coming through social media. And our Citizens Committee, I'm going to transition over here. We have Lucinda and Ginny from our Citizens for Voting Schools. So there is the opportunity for any of you or our community to get involved in the marketing or campaigning side. District can't do that, so I'm going to put names to face. Maybe you want to say hi. If you are interested in being involved, this would be the group to talk to. There's going to be at least probably 2 or 3 times before the vote is all said and done where that group will come together and be able to act on certain strategies that they're brainstorming.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jenny McKinney. I am the president of the Citizens for Voting Schools. Just so you know, we have been actually thinking and working on about this for over a year. We have so many moving parts. We are ready to just hit the ground running, and what we need is you people. we need bodies. We need people, because that's Ording. That's what I love about Ording is the community. And I know if we can get out to our community, then we can make this happen. But I need the bodies. I need the stories, and that's what I've been asking. I've been bugging Cliff and everyone for a year. I'm like, hey, we need some alumni. We need these stories. I've got all these ideas. It's now. It's time. Once January hits, we're going to be running, and that's where we have a phone trees to start bugging people who haven't put their ballots in. Like, we can pull rolls to know who has and hasn't. I found out, like, hey, my mom hasn't put hers in, I know she would vote yes. Or my son didn't put his in, or my husband, you know? It's getting the votes in. We know how many no's we're going to get. It's getting the yeses to put theirs in. We have an amazing district where most of the people who work here live here. So those are basically yeses, is getting them turned in. So I am super excited to get this going. I'm actually getting back on Facebook. For any of you who know, I hate Facebook. I've been off of it for 3 years. But we can do this. I know we can do this. We've got great leadership. We just need your stories, your feet, your time, and we're here. Come, talk. I'll be sitting here, take your numbers, whatever you need. But yes, we're the ones who can say not just the facts. We can pull the heartstrings. We can tell the real stories. We can say, vote yes. They can say, you should vote. We say, vote yes, and why.
Okay, board, Director Kinsler, Director Tracy, any comments from you?
I just want to thank everybody once again for coming, and for the new faces that maybe haven't been before, thank you very much. Please keep watching and attend any of the additional meetings that will be coming up after the first of the year. I loved your idea of having your students at the high school getting involved, and that's one of the things on the board, and it has, from the top down, student voice is everything, and we would love to be able to have you transition over here and figure out how you can get them involved in putting the yes out there and why those things are so important. So I don't know how legally we can make that happen within the school, but there you go. So again, just thank you so much, everybody.
I just want to encourage everyone to invite people to the town hall we have, or whatever it's called, in January, because the more people we get there, the more we can explain, and then the more people go out and talk to other people. And we've had kind of a hard time getting people there, we're trying to figure it out, but if everybody could just tell some people, hey, show up for this, that would be great. And I too appreciate all of your time.
And I'd love to thank just Trevor, Brian, Matt, and Liz for being here, walking through this process. It's about a year and a half to get us to this point, and it's go time. After February 14th, some of our future work is to think about boundaries. Who's going to these schools, and how do we get far enough in advance in the future to be able to not be disruptive? So when we bring them in as kindergartners, we can keep them there all the way through. We'll want to look at early learning. So what's going to happen to ECAT, for instance, right behind us? When this school leaves, well, they can't stay here by themselves, so what's going to happen to early learning and developmental? So we'll have some future work to be able to do, but we want to see what our voters are going to say so we know what problems we're trying to solve down the road. So with that, I'd like to say thank you for your engagement in this process, for your time away from loved ones and families. I hope you have a dry walk out of here. We'll see. Think no snow tonight. For your reading pleasure, take one of these. Bedtime reading, you'll probably be asleep in 5 minutes. If you want to know more about finance, Trevor's here, but thank you all for coming out. And we're here for a little bit, so if you have any questions we didn't get to answer, come on up. We'd love to answer your questions. Have a good night.